Welcome back, guys. So today we're going to be taking a look at a beloved cult classic from back in the day. Now, this particular film does require a little bit of backstory. So the movie we're looking at today is a trauma film. Now, one thing that a lot of trauma films, if not all trauma films really, have in common is that they are extremely graphic and over the top with their violence. They're usually full of a lot of sex and nudity, and some rather grotesque and even offensive humor at times. However, there are quite a few B-movie fanatics that really enjoy this movie, as well as a lot of trauma films. And that particular movie we're going to be looking at today is the Toxic Avenger, folks.
Well, thanks for the heads up. Now, for a lot of you out there, and this is partially why we're going to be revisiting this beloved trauma film today, a new Toxic Avenger film has recently been released, after being in development hell for quite some time. Now, what's without a doubt the biggest difference with this new movie is that the beloved Toxic Avenger, or Toxie as he is known in the films, is being portrayed by Peter Dinklage. So, someone who is very much on the opposite end of the size spectrum. And I'm not even saying this to try and be funny either, because as those of you who have seen the original film, as well as its sequels may know, Toxie was not only a normal sized dude, but he was also quite large, and also pretty jacked. The best way to describe this character is he's basically like a mini Hulk. So with many of your classic superheroes, our hero usually starts off as someone who is very meek, very timid, and oftentimes socially awkward as well. Probably the most classic example of this being Spider-Man. And the Toxic Avenger is no different. So meet Melvin, who has the honor of being probably the most stereotypical nerd you'll ever see in a movie. Melvin works as a janitor at one of the local gyms. Now, look, by no means at all am I condoning bullying. However, with all due respect to Melvin here, he kind of makes himself a target. Now, I could be wrong, but the implication here seems to be that my man is a little on the slow side. At least that's what I gather from this performance. That being said, get your ass out of the way.
Alright, well that's taking things a little far.
Then we get a 6-minute long sex scene. And yet again, I know we're supposed to hate these bullies and feel bad for Melvin, but up until this point, I can't even be that mad at them. I mean, my man is literally balls deep here, and the first thing he sees when looking up is this. You know his dick immediately went soft after that. Now, up until this point, I've actually been defending these bullies quite a bit. Wait, did I call them bullies? Actually, I meant fucking psychopaths. So the film pulls a Death Race 2000, in which the bullies are seen discussing the rules and point system of their game, and then go full on GTA, running over and killing anyone or anything in sight.
Now, kids under 12, they're worth double points.
And all of this is really just to make us hate these people. So that way, once our title character does come into the story, we get that satisfaction of seeing them all die in extremely brutal ways.
Be careful out there!
I'll give him 10 seconds.
I'm sure YouTube would probably have a shit fit if I were to show this portion of the movie in my video. So, just so you guys know, yes, the kid does die. And yes, it is an extremely effed up and brutal death. The next day back at the gym, the bullies come up with a plan to humiliate poor Melvin. Wait, did I say humiliate? I meant straight up fucking murder the poor guy. First, one of the girls comes on to him and tells him to meet her in the girls' locker room. And, of course, you know, his goofy ass is gonna fall for it. Now, I think most of us, if we were in this situation, would probably catch on rather quick, especially after she pulls out a pink tutu and tells us to wear it. But not poor, naive Melvin.
So, I'm hoping that since the scene doesn't get too explicit, that I'm okay to show this on YouTube.
So they trick Melvin into making out with a sheep, then chase him out a window, where a truck full of toxic waste just happens to be pulling up right below where he is. Also, I gotta love how these barrels of nuclear waste are just sitting on the back of this truck with no lids on top of them, no sort of protective barrier, or even radioactive symbols for that matter. Not only that, but these rednecks who are driving the truck have no type of protective gear or hazmat suits or anything. But hey, it was the 80s. And this scene just keeps going. First they point and laugh at him, then they light his ass on fire, and my man runs home and just takes a bath like it was no big deal. And now we get our infamous transformation scene. First Melvin's hair starts to fall out, then his skin begins to bubble, and I gotta say, for being a low-budget snuff film from the early 80s, these transformation effects aren't half bad. So now it's time for our hero to start cleaning up the streets. First on the kill list are these three goofballs, who after jumping this poor officer and threatening to shoot his dick off, have a run-in with our buddy Toxie. It's a pretty cool fight sequence, in which Toxie rips off one dude's hair, or at least rips his wig off, breaks another guy's fingers, and then my man proceeds to use this guy's face as a punching bag, before throwing him headfirst into another barrel of toxic waste. But, like any hero, Toxie does have a soft side to him, so word begins spreading around town about our toxic vigilante. Here we get to meet our gang of crooked politicians, including the corrupt mayor and the sheriff. Unfortunately for Toxie, while some do see him as a hero and a do-gooder, many are still frightened and repulsed by his appearance, including his own mother in a scene which, admittedly, made me feel a little sorry for the big guy. Next, we get a taco joint that gets robbed by a couple of Gotham City rejects. Thankfully, Toxie puts a stop to all this and proceeds to completely annihilate these guys, tearing one of their arms off and then proceeding to beat the guy with his own severed limb. Toxie milkboards the gang leader and then blends his head into a milkshake. He then finishes off the other two punks, first by deep frying one of them to death, and then by tossing one of them into an oven and baking him alive. Toxie comforts this poor blind girl, who invites him over to her place. Here we get plenty of wacky antics because, haha, she's blind.
I better get my cane. Oops. Sorry.
And now we get what is probably my favorite scene in the entire film, in which Toxie infiltrates the gym. One member is seen earlier selling some drugs, so you know his ass is grass. Also, I love how Toxie still keeps his mop with him. And now it's time for Toxie to get his revenge and start going after the people who are directly responsible for his creation. First, it's this chick's turn, who is seen, well, how do I put this? Pleasuring herself to a photo of one of the people that had gotten run over. He kills her by using some hot stones to light a fire under her ass. Next, he takes out a pimp, along with his gang of henchmen. So we get another montage of Toxie doing good deeds around the city, including rescuing a baby and walking an old lady across the street. The whole town begins to fall for Toxie, which our crooked politicians are none too happy about. So they come up with a plan to kill him. But that's gonna have to wait till later because we have some more Gotham City rejects to take care of. Or maybe they're Mad Max rejects, who knows.
But now, here's the thing. My man is on a revenge mission, but throughout this whole movie, he keeps getting sidetracked.
Well, apparently Toxie was feeling rather horny after all this killing. So we get a sex scene featuring a monster and a blind woman. I couldn't have made this type of shit up if I tried. I have no words. Now, it's at this point that Toxie remembers, oh shit, that's right, I'm supposed to be on a revenge mission. He then tracks down Julie, the girl who led him on and absolutely humiliated him during his janitorial days. Come on, lady, I already heard enough obnoxious screaming during that sex scene.
And you know what else we get more of? That's right, more bizarre transitions.
So we cut to the rest of the punks, and after beating an old lady, they steal her car and decide it would be a great idea to try and run Toxie over.
And it goes about as well as you'd expect.
Now apparently the actor who played the Toxic Avenger, Mitchell Cohen, really did ride on top of a moving car. So major kudos to him. And it does make for a rather impressive stunt. Well, at least for the up-close shots, because there are some very obvious dummy shots during this scene. So at this point, we're basically down to the last couple of punks, and while Toxie does manage to apprehend and royally fuck these guys up, he also causes quite a bit of damage and possible deaths along the way.
The wheel? Here, take the wheel!
Then Toxie decides to randomly kill this poor dwarf lady. And apparently his lady friend is just totally cool with this. But actually, as it later turns out, she was not so innocent, as we randomly find out in the last few minutes of this movie that she was head of some type of human trafficking operation. Although Toxie never knew this, so technically from his perspective, he did still murder an innocent old lady. So the mayor and his police chief assistant announced their plans to kill Toxie. Thankfully, the officer we saw get rescued earlier in the movie decides to step in and vouch for old Toxie, letting the others know that this monster actually saved his life. Not that this really amounts to much, as the military is still able to track Toxie down while he's in his sex tent with his lady friend, with the intention of killing him. However, a bunch of the townsfolk, including these kids, surround Toxie in an attempt to protect him. And in what's actually a rather sweet scene, all of these civilians come forth and defend our mutated friend. But the mayor is not having any of this. He draws out a pistol and attempts to shoot Toxie. And I guess all the townsfolk must have absolutely hated this mayor's guts, because after witnessing Toxie gruesomely murder him in front of everyone, they are completely unfazed. So the day is saved. I mean, it's easy to see why this is considered a cult classic by many, as well as how it was able to spawn 3 sequels plus a remake. Now, the movie is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, as there are some pretty effed up scenes and some rather offensive gags. However, if none of this bothers you, or if you're able to overlook these elements and enjoy the film for what it is, which is basically a satire on superheroes and comic book characters, just with, you know, a lot more gore, plus ass and titties, then you'll more than likely have a blast with this movie.
Alright guys, well that's it for today. Please, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe so you don't miss out on any more fun here at the Movie Buffer. As we say here every day, ciao for now.